Welcome to Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd DeVoe, where planning meets reality.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, I suppose. And it's I'm Todd DeVoe, and I've been involved responding to emergencies and disasters since, well, a long time ago. And about the year 2000, I started my journey into higher education and emergency and teaching emergency management. And I love learning things and sharing what I've learned with others. And I think that's a passion for me. That's why I love being in the classroom. And today we're going to talk about deliberate practice and how it turns amateurs into professionals. See, deliberate practice is what basically is when you take a look at what you're doing and you have a practice plan. And the concepts that practice makes perfect is kind of true if it's deliberate, right? As a general concept, practice means preparing, right? And it's the act of repeatedly performing certain activities or tasks with the intention of proving that specific associated skill. So, it's kind of like if you do a push up, but you do them poorly or do them wrong, is it going to really build you up again? And the answer is going to be no. But however, if you do some push ups that are correct, and even though you might not do as many as the wrong way, it means that you're actually building your muscles and your muscle memory and you're getting better. So we rehearse what we do. We have to do this in low pressure situations. So where it'll be better when we use those skills in situations where something is actually at stake, right? And so this is what we do in our livelihood. We should be practicing at that slow, low pressure situations, right? And when the disaster or crisis does occur, right, we are able to have the muscle memory that's rebuilt or is already built into you to be able to run through the situations without thought. Now, if you think about some of the highly trained athletes and people in the military, say like the Navy SEALs, for instance, they go repetitive until it becomes the second nature for them to do things. And so when they act, it's so smooth. And there's a saying that is used in the military. It is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's where we want to get into. We want to get into the point to where we're smooth and fast. So deliberate practice means practicing with clear awareness of specific components of a skill that we're aiming to improve and exactly how to improve them. So this is why we really need to have, these good unencumbered practice sessions, right? And some of the issues that we have with the way we do drills, exercises, and practices, especially when you start bringing in the higher C-suite people in business or your director level people at city government, is that they feel that they don't have the time and or the energy to place into what they feel is unused or unproductive time of practice, right? But if we really get into the concept of being that it is a deliberate practice session, that you have a really good plan set out and what you are practicing and why you're doing this, and you articulate this to them, they're going to have more support there. But unlike regular practice, in which we work on a skill by repeating it again and again until it becomes almost mindless, deliberate practice is laser focused activity. So it requires us to pay an unwavering attention to what we're doing at any given moment and whether or not it's improving or not. And so this is why when I say failure during a practice session is okay, it is because now you're seeing the areas that you really need to improve. And you have to write an improvement plan that's associated with this. And deliberate practice is characterized by several elements, and each is very worthy of examining. It's actively designed specifically to improve performance. Often with the coach's help or the instructor's help, it can be repeated a lot. And so that's the other thing that you really need to put into your practice plan and your exercise plans is having that subject matter expert in there for that particular task that you have so you can go over it and with their help, right? If you take the blind leading the blind, if you will, doesn't really help out at all. So what you need to do is bring in those subject matter experts, and it could be within your own organization. You don't have to tap outside the organization necessarily. You can always look at the people inside. So, for instance, if we're talking about computer skills, right here in at the Sitch Radio studios, we have Brian Colburn, who is an expert in computers, what he's doing. And so it's good to tap into his knowledge because he's in-house and he really knows what he's doing. He's going to help you out. Right. On the other hand, if you have somebody who you need other knowledge in and they're not within your organization, you have to bring them into the organization for that period of time. And this is why hiring outside experts is sometimes better. There's also that old saying is the person who knows the most has come from the furthest away. There are times when you bring in those subject matter experts from the outside, even though you have somebody in-house, right, that actually helps with fortifying and backing up the information that's already there. And so people understand, they go, oh yeah, it's not just this guy who I've had lunch with all the time that's telling me this thing. It's also, yeah, this is standard. That's the industry standards from outside. So bringing in those people also really helps. So while engaging in deliberate practice, we should be looking for errors and areas of weakness. And if you take a look at the concept in business with SWOT analysis, that's one of the things that you do in there is look at the weakness and how do you improve on those weaknesses. There's a school of thought that you only practice what you know, right? And you get really good at those areas that you're really good at, and then the areas of weakness you forget. Well, yeah, I understand that school of thought, but in this case, what you want to do is at least recognize those areas of weakness that you have, right? And if you don't want to practice those areas of weakness, if you're in a school of thought, only train what you do well. At least if you understand those weaknesses, you know where you can bring in additional staff. But on the other hand, if those are weaknesses that you want to improve on, you have to recognize them and really practice with those. So once identified, establish a plan for improving it. And if one approach doesn't work for you, that's okay. Keep trying other approaches because what works for one organization or one person doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So using deliberate practice, we can overcome many limitations that we might have seen as fixed limitations, right? And we can go further and we might even think possibly when we begin. And so deliberate practice creates new physical and mental capabilities, and it doesn't just leverage the existing ones. Deliberate practice is a universal technique and you can employ it for whatever you're trying to be best at, right? Think of people who like to play golf, right? That's why they get the golf pro and they go to the driving range all the time. I'm not much of a golfer. I do things I hit the ball very often when I'm on the course. But that being said, if I wanted to really increase my game, I would find myself a pro and I would, practice with them and maybe I would decrease my swing count. Right. If you think about this, but deliberate practice is also available for improving performance in other fields, such as teaching. And I do this myself, right? I deliberately read with note taking and things like this in mind. All right. And it's a practice process of reading and really digesting the information that's out there so I can actually excel at really of bringing other students into that process. And another thing too is things like writing. It doesn't get easier or doesn't get easier if you don't write, right? So you should be writing and writing well. And then again, decision making. And this is why we had all those other lectures that we did on decision making as part of this thing. So decision making is also a skill set you can learn, and leadership as well, right? Leadership is another area where you can deliberately practice and learn the best practices that are out there and implement those into your daily life, right? So the key is to identify objective standards of performance, right? Study those top performers, those people that are out there that are doing it, those people that you can look up at, like say in business, someone like Elon Musk, for instance, who is changing the world through, all sorts of different businesses that he's doing, right? And then design practice activities reflected on what they do, right? And so recent decades have seen dramatic leaps in what people are capable of doing in many fields. And you know what? The other thing too, what I really do is I look outside of my current field, right? Education and training, emergency management, but I also learn from people outside of that field where we're looking at what they're doing. Like, so for instance, like Elon Musk, if you will, or I actually go back to the classics when it talks about philosophy and what happened with the Greek philosophers and all that type of stuff. It's really interesting to be able to read their stuff from the ancients and apply it to what we're doing today. So many of us spend time each week practicing different sets of skills in lives and work, but we don't automatically do get better because we're repeating the same actions, the same mistakes that we made. And so that's why the idea of going into of deliberate practice on what we are doing. You know, that being said, deliberate practice is challenging and it can be uncomfortable, right? And imagine the world from the perspective of a baby learning to walk for the first time, right? It's not an easy process. They need to develop new skills and capabilities. They need to build those muscles up as they're learning to walk. And they didn't understand like what the process is. And sometimes there's also a little bit of fear that's in their bodies, right? That they're going, oh, if I fell down last time, can I take that step? Can I take that step? And then they finally take that first step. And from there on, if those of us that have children know that it's like, okay, they're on their own. They're off like a rocket. So that is deliberate practice. They are deliberately practicing when you're going through there. And so that's the reason why when we talk about deliberate practice, you've always heard the term taking baby steps first. Walk before you can run, things like this. So deliberate practice requires to keep targeting our weak areas, and it means spending time doing stuff we're not good at, right? And at the moment, it can feel pretty miserable and uncomfortable. But the quickest route to improvement involves stepping outside of our comfort zone. And I really do stress on the idea of stepping outside the comfort zones and making it something that is a goal for you to be comfortable in these things. So seeing deliberate practice is challenging. It's impossible for us to do it all day long. And so you need to put time into this area that you're practicing. And you also have to take time to rest from that for your mental strain to relax that aspect of it. So it doesn't have to be something that you're doing for 12, 20 hours a day, right? You can do it for small bites, 1 hour days. And, deliberate practice is hard and it hurts, but it works, right? And before we saw deliberate practice involving continuously stretching ourselves or self improvement, mentally stretching, that is, right? Um, we require that constant feedback about the current level of performance so we can identify what works and what is better. And I hate to use this term, but it's not necessarily stepping out of the box, but it's definitely stepping out of that comfort zone. Because deliberate practice is most effective when you have the help of a coach or someone or some kind of teacher to help you step it outside of that comfort zone to make you comfortable in that situation. So the best teacher is not only one who knows the most, but also is able to reduce that pain as you're going through this and be able to instill that knowledge to you as you're going through. Right. So it's not always comfortable when you're going through deliberate practice, but it's something that we're going to really have to do to be able to get better at everything that we're doing. And see, deliberate practice leverages the ideas that you've had where you think that you're good, right? Finding those weaknesses that you have, improving on those weaknesses, and making you completely whole again. So deliberate practice isn't everything, but if you want to keep improving your skill and overcoming your plateau, you'll benefit incorporating the principles in of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means practicing with clear awareness of the specific components of a skill that we're aiming to improve and exactly how to improve them. And we also engage deliberate practice with the greater capabilities and when our greater to get our capabilities greater, and our minds and our bodies are far often more malleable than we actually realize. And deliberate practice is structured and methodical, right? And deliberate practice is challenging because it involves constantly pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And deliberate practice requires constant feedback and measurement for improvement metrics and not only vanity metrics. And that's the point there. Don't just tell people you're doing a good job, tell them what they're not doing good at and improve that. Deliberate practice also is best when it helps with teachers or coaches or other mentors that are around you. And continued deliberate practice requires a great ideal of motivation. And deliberate practice requires constant, intense focus. So it also requires you to take a break as well, because that intense focus can get overwhelming. And deliberate practice leverages the space effect, meaning constant commitment over time is crucial. And if you're content with your current level of skill, you're just doing something for fun. You don't necessarily need to engage in deliberate practice. But I'm telling you something: if you're comfortable, if you are really content with your current level of skill, well, it's time for you to do something new because you need to always sharpen that sword. So deliberate practice is best suited for the pursuit of that you're looking to aim high, achieve high, and practice high. So thank you for being with us today, and visit Titan HT for all your communication needs. And remember, follow us on your favorite podcast player, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and join us next week. Until then, stay safe and stay hydrated.